Hello and welcome back. Thank you for joining us here today. I have a really special guest. I can't wait to tell you about her. But just before I introduce her, I'd just like to introduce myself if it's your first time here. My name is Bal Pawa. I've been a life strategies coach since 2009. I'm an author, a podcaster, but most importantly, I'm a mom of two incredible sons that I'm raising on the west coast of Canada with my husband. And you're here on my YouTube channel or you're listening on my podcast. And the theme is to learn to like yourself, learn to like your family, and to really, really strengthen the relationships under your roof. And the purpose of that is really, it's a metaphor for the relationships in your heart. And quite often when we are experiencing chronic stress, anxiety, and different things, it can really impact how we feel about ourselves, and then also how it impacts our family. So I thought it would be such an honor and a phenomenal gift to you for us to have Dr. Bal Pawa here with us today. She is the author. You can see how many notes I have here of The Mind Body Cure: Heal Your Pain, Anxiety, and Fatigue by Controlling Chronic Stress. Dr. Pawa, thank you so much for being here. I would love if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, good morning. Thank you so much, Ranveer. And I'm so excited to be on your show. I've heard so many great things about what you've done and how you've transformed people. So I'm very aligned with what you do and looking at the inner job. I always say health is an inside job, and you're helping people to connect with their inner child and their inner being and their higher self. And I think that is so aligned. So a little bit about me. I'm a medical doctor, but beyond that, I was a pharmacist. So I was a pharmacist. I was in obstetrical general practice. And in the last 20 years, I've been focusing more on integrative health. And personally, I am also a mom, and that's one of my proudest achievements, to raise two independent, healthy kids. And in this crazy world, this is an accomplishment. So
Yes.
when you look at all the stressors that kids are facing, teaching them to be resilient and independent was a personal challenge, and they hopefully are. I grew up in Newfoundland. A lot of people don't know about me.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't look like a Newfoundlander, but my father immigrated way back in the 60s, and I grew up in Newfoundland, and I just loved the way that I was brought up because I had the Eastern Canadian Newfoundland experience in the snow and being connected to a community and growing up, skating on a pond, swimming in a river. I had all that. And then I had the Eastern philosophy from my parents as well about taking care of your body, yoga, prayer, good food. And so I have sort of a blend of the Eastern and Western philosophies in my personal lifestyle as well. And I think all of that culminated into this book.
Oh, and I got goosebumps right now because, for me, it's a, similar experience blending the East and West and being able to, it's like the blue zones of living, being able to take these different philosophies and pull them together. And your book is absolutely incredible. It's one of those books that it's a must have. I think everybody needs to have this, as you can tell. I think so, with all my purple Post-its. We could talk for probably a whole day about the book. So what I'm hoping to do is, I love how you broke it down into different categories, and you start with the sort of idea, mind your mind, mind your heart, mind. And I really like that whole concept, but I wanted to dive in because one thing struck me right off the bat. First of all, the preface, I cried. So it was just so powerful that you were able to share something so deeply personal with us about your own experience and how you tie your own experiences plus patient experiences through the book. Incredibly powerful.
And it was a difficult thing to share. And
Oh,
as a physician, you were taught to be very private. It's a journey that I had to go through, but actually sharing it and being vulnerable has really liberated me. And through the TED talk that I did, they encouraged me, well, why are you so passionate about mind body medicine? And when I told them about my story and my experience as a patient, they said, you have to tell your story. And I said, I can't do that on the stage. It's very private. They said, no, it's very important to share that as a physician, that you also went through that dark place. You were in that despair and chronic pain, but you came out of it. And I think patients would appreciate knowing that a doctor had to navigate the system. So I shared the story, and I'm so glad I did,
Yeah.
because I've had emails from all over the world where people say, I relate to your loss and your pain and your experience. And if you were able to heal yourself, then show me how. And
Yes.
so what happened with me, just briefly, is I was not, of course, I wasn't perfect. I had a great life, a perfect life, two
Yeah.
young kids. I had a practice, married, had a nice house, was just busy, busy, delivering babies, which is what I love to do. So I finished delivering a baby and was driving home, and I was literally hit by a truck. And the sudden shock of the truck and my car, and it was just a head-on collision, basically. I was extricated from the car and taken back to the hospital
Yeah.
where I just left. So the
Yeah.
same hospital I left as a physician, I came back as a patient. And when you come back as a patient, it's a very different experience. You're vulnerable. You are being poked and prodded, and you're at the mercy of doctors. But that started the whole 7-year journey of healing. So
Yes.
through that ordeal, I lost my baby because I was pregnant at the time with our third child. And that was an emotional loss, but I had a lot of physical injuries as well. So broken bones and collapsed lung. And I gave my whole trust to the medical system. I just said, here, I'm here. I'll do whatever you tell me. Just fix me. I want to get my life back. I had drugs, I had surgery, I had multiple surgeries, I had massage, I had interventions of every kind, but I wasn't healing.
Right.
And they all meant well, rehab specialists, neurologists, surgeons. Um, I think what was missing in our system, what became apparent is we don't involve the patient. We don't say, well, you're part of the healing and you
Yes.
need to show up and you need to advocate for your health and you need to realize that a lot of your mindset is influencing your healing. That conversation never happened.
So powerful.
Yeah, so those conversations need to happen. We need to involve the patient in their care.
Yeah.
And so then when I realized I can't do deliveries anymore, I wanted to do something. I went to Harvard Medical School to learn how to do counseling for mind body.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that when I arrived, that this doctor and I got along so well. He was doing research on the autonomic nervous system. He took a personal interest in my case and he said, look, we've got to heal you because then if you prove that you can heal, my research works.
Amazing.
His research was on the autonomic nervous system. And that's the premise of the book. Learn that you have an autonomic nervous system,
Yeah.
and then what can you do about it? And going through that process with him, I not only healed myself, I came back to Vancouver and said, I can no longer just practice medicine the way I did. I have to change this system.
Yes.
And that's when I found some like-minded physicians and we opened an integrative clinic. And now I've been able to transform the lives of thousands of people because I use the principles of mind-body medicine.
Yeah. And also you harness the energy of the trauma and the crisis, and you used it to transform your life's experience and found your true calling. I think, I think it's fascinating how sometimes, we hear whispers and we think these things, and then, we get a knock on the door gets knocked down, or the whole house burns down, and then we have to decide, okay, I'm now starting from scratch. What do I want?
I think
And
that's a very important point. What it is when things happen, it's so easy for us to go to that place of fear,
yes.
uncertainty, and it's not fair and victim mentality. Why
Yeah.
me? And I did.
Yeah.
But I reframe it now and I say, that wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. That was probably, there was a lot of good. There were some best things that happened to me because of that.
Yeah.
Sure, there was loss, there was pain, there was 7 years I'm not going to get back. But because of that experience, I completely reframed the way I look at the world with gratitude, even with my patients. I'm doing integrative medicine.
Yeah.
I wrote a book. I did a TED Talk. I wouldn't have done any of those things. I would have just been blindly writing prescriptions and diagnostic tests for patients and not necessarily helping them in the long run.
No, I just think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. And so thousands and thousands of people are being impacted. You know, there was a quote in the book, and I've got notes, I'm looking down. I apologize. Let's look at the camera. This is really struck me because I hear this in my coaching practice. I hear a version of this, but the way you said it was so profound. We end each day feeling exhausted, yet sleep does not come easily. We wake up feeling anxious. And it's incredible how the impact of chronic stress, or it's incredible the impact of chronic stress on our health. And I'd like to dive into that, but I also want to point out quickly what I feel that you did in the book really, really incredibly well is you tied, science and stories, but also you're giving people power by including these self-assessments. So
Mhm.
fantastic. Absolutely. I'm head over heels for self-assessments because that internal audit makes you feel like you're in the driver's seat. So I just wanted to dive into my first question is tell me a little bit about how chronic stress you feel, in the sort of layman's terms impacts our health.
So I think in order to understand chronic stress, Ranveer, we have to talk about acute stress because
Perfect.
acute stress was designed so that we could run away from a saber-toothed tiger, right? Our nervous
Yes.
system would say, oh, danger. And within a second, the message goes to your adrenal gland, your stress gland. You make cortisol, adrenaline, and you run away, fight or flight. And danger is gone. You calm down, your body goes to normal. Great. That is necessary. We would not survive without that. If someone's chasing you in the dark
Yes.
alley, you
Yes.
need that. However, if imagine if your body lived in that state all the time, fight or
Right.
flight all the time. For example, with this corona and the COVID crisis, it's been almost a year. We are now facing a pandemic of chronic stress and it's taking
Yes.
a toll on the body. So chronic stress, what it does, it wreaks havoc with every biological system. So I
Right.
talked about the gut. Why does it cause problems in the gut? Well, if you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, your body is designed to shunt blood away from your gut, turn off all your secretions, slow down your motility, your peristaltic contractions. So your gut's not functioning. It's not meant to digest when you're under stress. So when you damage the gut, well, you're going to get problems with food sensitivities. You're going to get problem with immune system. So here we are worried about corona, but then we're compromising our immune system. So I wanted to show people that you have to see that one action creates a reaction. So if you
Yes.
stay in chronic stress, then you're going to change your gut flora, your microbiome. You're going to have low immunity. You're going to have changes in your breathing, your heart, your inflammation, your sleep. So that statement that I said, you go to bed, you're supposed to go to bed and get a time to have downtime, resurge,
Yes.
rejuvenate. But if your mind is working through fear and uncertainty, what's going to happen with my job? Am I going to see my elderly mother in the
Yeah.
nursing home? Those stressors are a trigger to your brain to say, okay, we got to work through these problems. So you don't sleep. So you
Right.
wake up anxious, you go to bed anxious. But
Yeah.
what's it doing to your biological systems?
It's a
We
really,
get
a
sick. We
really
get
big
sick
deal.
eventually. Yeah.
Because what you're doing is going like out of the silos because we have this doctor for this or this doctor for that, which there's nothing against that, but
No,
when we put all the systems together you have a real wholesome approach, and you can look at how this impacts that, and specialties are so important, but it's also important to figure out how they are integrated.
that's the thing, connecting that our body is this beautiful
Yeah.
machine and it works as a unit, not just a sum of its parts. And we
Mhm.
often forget that. So this
Yes.
is why I want people to remember, integrate. The body works as an integrated system.
Absolutely. You know, you talk a little bit about our second brain.
Yeah.
And I think I would love for the audience to hear a little bit about the second brain. What is it?
It's so interesting, Revere. Like people don't think about this, but when an embryo is forming, so when you're in your mom's tummy and there's a little embryo the size of a peanut, as it's forming, this is so cool. The part that forms your brain and spinal cord
Yeah,
is exact same tissue that goes off to form your gut. So the
amazing.
same neural tissue is forming the brain and spinal cord is going to form your gut. So that means your gut has nerve tissue in there. It has its own neuroendocrine system built into the gut. So sometimes I'll say, wow, I get this gut feeling.
Yeah,
Sometimes your gut will perceive danger before your brain registers it. So there's
yeah,
something real to that gut feeling. So your brain and that the spinal cord are your thinking brain,
yeah,
and your gut is your feeling brain. So I often refer to the gut as your second brain because
yeah.
if your second brain is healthy, the microbiome is healthy, the function of the gut is healthy, that creates health throughout the body, including sending serotonin to the brain. Serotonin, your happy hormone, is manufactured in the gut.
Fantastic. Like that's so
Yeah.
powerful
It's
to
so
know.
important. How come we don't know that?
And yeah, that's the thing. And it's always like, why didn't I know? Or
Yeah.
and you know, when we're in a state of information overload, so you know, we hear something and you know, the doctors are busy, so you can't always get all this information. And that's why nurturing through intellectual conversation like this and giving ideas like as powerful as your second brain and knowing the science behind it. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. So you'll look at all the diseases that what we call psychosomatic stress
Right.
ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel syndrome. There are so many diseases, heartburn, reflux, that we run out and we take a pill for every ill. We have a pill for heartburn. We have a
Yeah.
pill for irritable bowel. But really, when I started talking to patients and saying, "Hey, what's going on? When did this begin?" Well, my girlfriend broke up with me.
Right.
I moved out and started eating junky food. I started this new job with the bosses on my tail. That's when my gut symptoms started. So then integrative medicine is going back to the root cause. If we fix the root cause, then you may not be taking all those drugs. Let's fix what's broken, not just fix the symptoms.
Yeah, treating this the root, not the symptoms. So powerful, so powerful. And the other interesting thing about the body is you share a really interesting stat about our lung capacity, because we, you know, people think it's trite to talk about breathing. Oh no, they just told me to breathe. They just told me to breathe. But there's something so important and powerful, especially with that stat you shared, because and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the lungs and breathing and what are we not using?
Yeah, there's a lot of real estate in your lungs. So first of all, let's talk about breath. Breath is something, as soon as you're born, you take your first breath. And we breathe 23,000 times a day. We're going to
Wow.
breathe. It's something you don't even think about. It's automatic through your autonomic nervous system. It's automatic. Try to stop breathing, you can't. It kicks in, right?
Yeah.
But what we can control is how we breathe. And I had to relearn breathing when I went to that Harvard mind body course. They said, okay, just breathe. And they had this apparatus where they showed you. And most of us, we're all physicians, we were using the top 1/3 of our lungs. We weren't breathing properly. So he taught us that if you do your deep breathing, you increase oxygen to all that real estate down there. It's almost like balloons opening up
Yeah.
on this machine, and we're able to see. So when you take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for 5 seconds, you've just blown up the balloons in your lungs. All that oxygen then goes to the tissues. Oxygen is the drug of choice, right? It's what
Right.
we need. That's what we need to live on. And so learning to breathe properly by using your muscles is one way to calm down the nervous system. So in addition to providing oxygen, you're actually putting the brakes on your nervous system. So I teach people how to properly breathe now. First, I'll listen with the stethoscope and I'll say, okay, now take a really deep breath. And
Yeah.
then they open up their lungs. I said, look how much real estate you just opened up.
Yeah.
And then they say, wow. And they're often walking around just holding their breath because we're on edge. But when we do that, our diaphragm, this powerful muscle, is telling the brain she's on alert. There's a message that goes from your muscle, the
Yes.
diaphragm, up to the brain saying she's on alert, make cortisol and adrenaline. But if you do deep breathing and relax that diaphragm, open up the belly, you've just sent a message to the brain, hey, chill, it's okay. We got the brakes on, turn off your gas, and we can produce oxygen, we can produce DHEA, serotonin, endorphins, all the chemicals that heal.
Yes.
Because the opposite of fight or flight is rest and repair. So if you want to start healing and want to feel, you want to change your feeling and you want to do the healing, then you got to start with the breath. That's where it all begins, is the breath.
And I want to emphasize what Dr. Pawa is saying here. Like, you don't have to go take a breath work clinic. So, they're like, we have this trend where like, oh, now, she's talking about breath and I'm going to go now sign up for a clinic. That's not the message here. The message here is you're using, I think, a 1/3 of your capacity, your real estate of your lungs. And so you can do this. Sorry, my computer's frozen there for a second. You can do this for free in your home and to pay real close attention and just imagine, you can use different visualizations. You can imagine sipping the breath up your spine. You can imagine your belly rising. You can do a lot of little things. So don't make it work. And I just wanted to quickly highlight that, because I think a lot of people are so
that's a great point.
Gone into this. Oh, I got to
do it perfectly.
I got to do it perfectly. And so just practice, practice with what you have.
Well, maybe at the end, if we get a couple of minutes, we'll do a breathing technique so everybody can at least learn how to do it and what does it feel like. And once you get a practice of breathing properly, that you've just started your healing process just by doing that. And then you can work on resetting the mind and resetting everything else, but reset the breathing at the very beginning. I think that's the crucial piece.
Perfect. Well, perfect. I can't wait to do that. We'll do that. There's, like I said, so much, because I'm a little bit of a nerd. So I've got all of, I'm happy to be.
You're naturally curious.
I'm naturally curious,
which is such a gift.
Yeah. I'm just fascinated by what I don't know. And so I love to learn. But what's interesting you talk about you used a Hippocrates quote that says all disease begins in the gut, and we've talked a little bit about that. And there's so much in the chapter of Mind Your Gut.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about, I'm going to pronounce this, hopefully I'm doing it, neurogastroenterology. You talk about the vagus nerve, psych health, and the gut. So much stuff. And if we were to like pick because you got to get the book, of course, people need to buy this book, but if they needed a tidbit there, what would you offer them about that area?
Do not underestimate the power of a healthy gut. It is the very, very cornerstone of health. Because if you study disease, which I have, and physicians have to learn about disease, the root cause of disease is inflammation. And
Yes.
Inflammation begins in the gut. So if you have a healthy gut, 85% of your immune system is in the gut. And both stress and poor diet contribute to an unhealthy gut. And I highlight stress because when we're stressed, we make bad choices about food. I bet if I asked anybody, what is a healthy diet? They'll say, oh, you have to eat lots of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and plants. Great. Everybody knows that. Okay. But why is it that we make poor choices when we're stressed? What's emotional eating about, for example?
Yes.
So we'll eat more carb foods, we'll eat junky foods, we'll choose more alcohol, we'll drink more coffee. My point is that we have to, at the very, very basic, is create a healthy mindset. So your mindset is grounded, you're peaceful, you're conscious, and you're making healthy choices. So when you sit down to eat a meal, most of us will say, oh, I spent money on organic produce and I got these wonderful supplements. Well, guess what? You do not absorb those micronutrients if your mind is in toxic relationship with someone sitting across from you.
Yeah.
If you're worried, if you're scared, if your brain is doing something else, your not able to digest unless you're in rest and digest, which is your brakes. You have to put the brakes on your nervous system. So
Yeah.
being mindful when you eat, being mindful when you choose your food. So the connection to the gut, as you started out, is the neuroenterology, gastroenterology means how does our psychology
Yes.
impact our digestion? And you'd be surprised to know that digestion actually begins in the brain.
Fascinating.
Yeah, like if you go out and you've just bought all this food, while you're prepping the food, while you're touching the food and smelling the food and cutting up your tomato, your brain already remembers tasting that tomato and is preparing the juices to get ready to digest that tomato.
Right.
Right? So digestion actually begins in the brain. So that's why the neurogastroenterology connection is so important, that your brain is constantly sending signals and the gut
Yeah.
is sending signals back up. It's a bidirectional flow. And a big chunk of the highway is the vagus nerve. So the
Yes.
vagus nerve is, not the kind of Vegas that you hear on, right?
That we can't go to right now anyway.
Can't go there anyway. But you have to learn to know your vagus, because if we can learn how to regulate our vagus nerve by being mindful, by being calm, then you will digest better. But if you've got a very agitated vagal nerve, you're not going to be able to digest properly.
I think you said it was 85% of the, sorry, I just wanted to emphasize that, and I should have written it down, but I'm so engrossed in what you're listening, and so focused on
Yeah,
listening to.
okay. So
Yeah.
85% of your immune system is in the gut, and 75% of your serotonin is manufactured in the gut.
Okay, so make sure if you're watching this video, please write that down, because that is massive.
Yeah, that's a
Massive,
huge
massive,
portion.
massive. Because and that is giving you power, because you get to make food choices. Nobody's forcing you to buy this or buy that. So function. I have a great little tool I use for people that are really can't figure things out. I say just function in a 24-hour window. So
Yeah.
tomorrow for breakfast, I'm going to eat eggs, and for lunch, I'll have this salad, and for dinner, I'm going to have salmon. Don't think about 2 days from now. Just try to plan for that one day at a time. That takes that big pressure off. And think about yourself knowing this 85% stat. Like, that's huge. And then if you couple it with small steps.
And I think being mindful whenever you make
Yes.
decisions. So who's making decisions? Are we just conditioned? And if you are conditioned all the time and you keep doing the same thing every day, you're going to get the same results. But if you
100%.
want different results, you have to challenge your thinking and stay awake and say, okay, who just made that decision? Was that just
Yes.
an automatic decision, or was that a conscious decision? And this is where I want people to engage their mind. What are they thinking? What are they choosing? What thoughts are they listening to? And be aware and be like a gatekeeper, because there are 60,000 thoughts a
A
day.
lot.
And you can't listen to them all. And most of them are automatic or negative or
Yeah.
repetitive. But we have to be the gatekeepers and say, I'm only allowing in thoughts that serve me, that are positive, that are based on trust, so that you stay conscious as the gatekeeper in your head.
It's so important that the auditing exercise, I think, is so valuable, because the more we try to put our heads in the sand, and I don't want to look, and I don't want to see how much, I don't want to look at my bank account, I don't want to look at my scale, I don't want to look at my whatever. And there, that when you're doing that, I don't want to look. You're not the gatekeeper. You're basically letting things just kind of
You're in
unfold.
That's right. You're not in the driver's seat at that
Yeah.
point.
And
Yeah.
for your health, like when you read this book, you'll understand you need to be in the driver's seat. You
And I
need to be engaged.
and I think what's important here, we're talking about thoughts. Thoughts are the language of the mind.
Yes.
Feelings are the language of the body. And when we're doctors, we're just say, well, Ranbir, how are you feeling today? And you might say, I'm tired, I didn't sleep, my leg hurts. That's your feeling. Okay, well, if I want to change how you're feeling, I have to go back and say, well, what were you thinking? What was going on? What decisions did you make? What
Yes.
thoughts were you thinking? And so this is where it's really important to start programming your mind to work for you, work on a
Yes.
program of trust and kindness and self-compassion, so that you have a really good program. And then your brain is a computer, it just plays that program, and your body is the display monitor on your computer. And that's the feelings, that's the symptoms that we measure. And we're just treating your symptoms. Here, you're not sleeping, here's a drug. You've got a headache, here's a pill. So we don't want you to be just in that mode where you have a pill for every ill. You be in charge and say, this is, I was thinking about the argument I had with my boss, and now I woke up with a headache. Let me see if I can make that connection.
Yes.
The awareness of all this thought is the agent of change. And when people
100%.
become more aware, that's the catalyst to going to the next step.
Absolutely 100%. Like, it's just so powerful. You are a powerful force. And sometimes I think it's almost a little scary because we're not used to driving this, Ferrari. So, when you're learning to drive again, don't expect
BMW. We're going
to go in the BMW, but you're not used to driving the
Yeah.
BMW. So you have to learn how to drive again. So don't expect yourself, as you read Dr. Pawa's book or you're listening to this on the podcast or watching on YouTube, don't expect yourself to win the race right off the bat. Like we're talking about, small steps, small little increments is what's going to create the change. And it's interesting, we talk about small things you can do. It leads me into your next chapter. I'm going to forget what it's. I mind your movement, and it's. I found it fascinating that people with chronic stress can actually feel like moving is a waste of time, and moving is a small thing we can do. So I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, yeah. So moving is so natural to being human, right? That's what creates the difference between someone who's not moving or moving is like, are they alive or not? Then
Yeah.
a baby starts moving and the mom says, oh my gosh, there's life inside me. So movement is a very big part of being human. But often when we're going through stress, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. Some people just freeze. They can't do anything. They don't take any action. And because they're under a lot of stress, they'll just prefer to escape, watch Netflix, and lie on the couch. The unfortunate part of that is that if we don't move, a number of things happen. Our body systems, the heart, the lungs, the kidney, the brain, all our biological systems are not integrating well. So in order to have body integration, when you exercise, you need your lungs, you need your kidneys, you need your liver, you need your gut, you need everything to be working together. And when you have stress, if you're sitting and stewing in stress, that's very different than having stress and burning off your cortisol and adrenaline. So if you're sitting and lying down and you're stressed, your mind is creating cortisol and adrenaline. What are those two hormones doing to all your biology? Right? But if you got up and said, look, I'm going to burn this stress off and get up and do even a 10-minute, 20-minute power walk or jumping jacks, you get your heart rate up, you just burned off cortisol and adrenaline. So that's the number one thing, is that you need to, if you're stressed, burn off that stress. So that's very important. The second thing is that when we exercise earlier in the day, that helps our circadian rhythm, our biological clock, to get to sleep at night. So exercise earlier in the day actually sets the tone for sleeping better at night. So exercise improves your sleep, improves your immune system, and exercise ultimately improves your memory. So it makes you smarter. And this is why teachers are telling kids now, you need to just have a quick break, go outside, run around, and they came back and they performed better on tests. So this is a proven European and North American study that exercise actually makes kids smarter.
Yeah, I have a book on it. I can't see it right now. I've also being I'm so interested in it, but I read how they did some exercise where they, but in a school, like an inner city school, and they had the kids wear heart rate monitors. So they actually went to their personal best versus the group's best, and how much that impacted their grades and scholarships. And it was just Fascinating.
Yeah, and it's not just kids, but we've got all these elderly people sitting in nursing homes. And why are they
Yes.
just sitting there in their beds withering away? But then in Europe, in Denmark, they started taking these seniors and just getting them assisted and walking and moving. And their memory improved, their sleeping improved. They started to feel better and they wanted to move more. So movement is integral to being human and alive. We have to move.
And it's, yeah. And I think we're so focused on these quick fixes and somebody else will do it. And all of that kind of stuff. We've forgotten the basics of being human. And I think that's one of the sort of things that's happened in the last, 20, 30 years is
Yes,
a lot
exactly.
of that is because of convenience has gone away.
Yeah, and sitting is the new smoking now because
Oh, for
everybody's working from
sure.
home, they're on Zoom, and this whole pandemic has changed our routine. People say, "Well, I don't even get out of my pajamas anymore. What's the point?"
Yeah.
But our bodies are built on things that are called circadian rhythms. Like we
Yeah.
could wake up, you should go to the window and let the light hit the back
Mm,
of your retina so that that sets the tone for the day. And your hormones are pulsed out at different times throughout the day. So it's really important to maintain your routine, get a routine going, get up early on time, go to bed on time,
yeah.
eat on time. We need consistency and routine, and your body will function really well.
That's such a fantastic tip. Thank you for that. We're talking a lot about the heart and the mind and the body, and you write a chapter about mind your heart and the importance of breath and meditation. And I love what you said. The heart mirrors precisely what's happening in the brain.
Mhm.
And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the heart and the impacts and the things you can do to impact your heart health and the mind and the and mind connection as well.
Sure. And as a doctor who's been trained in Western medicine, we were taught about cardiology and how the heart works. But the heart is not just your glorified pump that pumps 100,000 beats a day and sends blood to all your organs. It's not just a pump. The cardiac nervous system, in the last decade, we've discovered that your heart actually has a lot of connections, especially for women. Women have a very deep cardiac nervous system. So women respond to emotional stress more than men. When women get heart attacks, it's usually after emotional trauma. Men get heart attacks after shoveling snow or lifting something heavy
Yeah,
on a exertion. Our hearts are different. So there's a gender difference in men
that's
and women's
interesting.
hearts. And I thought that was fascinating
Yeah.
about the nervous system. But I'll tell you, this most recent case that I had, I'll just call her Mary, 68 years old, never had high blood pressure, never has heart disease, walks about 4 or 5 kilometers a day. She's so fit. She teaches yoga. She's such a lovely lady, takes care of herself. But she had a very big tragedy. Her husband was driving home from Coquitlam, had a head-on collision, and died immediately.
Oh,
So very, very tragic, very sad. And of course, her doctor, her GP was helping her with the trauma. And then suddenly she phoned me, she phoned our clinic and said, "I'm in hospital and I've just had a heart attack."
mm,
And we thought, wow, she doesn't even have any risk factors. And the unusual part, and I talk about this case in my book,
yeah.
the emergency doctor said her heart has changed shape. And he said, it looks like an octopus trap. It changed shape. It's called Takotsubo's cardiomyopathy. In other
Wow.
words, broken heart syndrome. So talk
Holy.
about your mind heart connection. So this woman was so traumatized by her husband. She never had any risk factors for heart disease,
Yeah.
but just the grief changed her heart stretched, and she got a heart attack. Now, I talked to her and I said, "Look, I've seen this. I wrote about it in my book.
Yeah.
What I want you to do," and I actually went to visit her in the hospital. I just calmed her down,
Yeah.
gave her a lot of, counseling, and said, "You've got to heal yourself. You're going to get really sick if you just, because he's gone, but you have to learn to go on. You've got
Yeah.
so many other things. You've got two wonderful sons." Anyway, we counseled her. About 3 months later, the heart shape changed and it went back to normal. No longer in that Takotsubo's cardiomyopathy. It's gone back to normal, and her blood pressure is back to normal. She still gets counseling, of course. It was a big loss, but she's getting through it. But that illustrates how our emotions, stress, actually can change the shape of your heart. Imagine that. So that's why it's really important for us to know that what we think and what meaning we give to our thoughts is changing the biology of our organs.
So powerful.
Right.
So powerful. Holy smokes.
And so what can you do to keep your heart healthy? Yes, of course, eat healthy, exercise, sleep, but stress is a huge risk factor for heart disease. And how are you showing up when stress happens? Because if you're not showing up properly, then you're causing little micro damages to your heart too, through inflammation.
Yeah, that's a big deal. One of the quick tools that that I use that might, if you're thinking of those responses, I use that old Sufi saying, it's supposed to be between dialogue between me and somebody else, or you and somebody else, but I use it for my internal dialogue. And before
Right.
you speak, let your words pass through these three gates. Is it true, kind, or necessary?
Yes.
And so I find that in stress, we say a lot of unnecessary and unkind things to ourselves. And so trying to pay attention to just having a small little filter or something you can put in place to help you stay on track, or have a good friend to talk to, or reach out for support and help. If you're under chronic stress, you got to get help. It's super important. And then oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You don't have to do it alone. A lot of people feel that, oh, if I haven't mastered mind body, if I haven't, I can't get, grip on my thoughts, I can't control it. You don't have to do it alone. Your
Yeah.
first step is just to do the breathing and get in touch with yourself and recognize, almost as a silent witness, oh, that's anger. Oh, that's guilt. All those emotions are going through you, but they're not who you are. So learn to identify your emotions as things that just pass through, like a river,
Yeah.
and water but you're the river bank, and that's who you are. You're solid, but these emotions will pass through. Acknowledge them, hear them, but don't identify with them always. Don't dwell there.
Yeah, because they're definitely not permanent.
Mhm.
We started our conversation thinking, talking about going to bed exhausted, waking up anxious, and the conversation in and around sleep. And I I get a little turned off by all the sleep monitoring, because to me, these things that are normal and human, we shouldn't be tracking and gamifying it. And I think that adds a lot of stress and anxiety. But when it comes to sleep, like what is considered a normal amount of sleep? And any advice you
I'm
have
doing
around
a
sleep?
talk on sleep this Friday, so that's really relevant. And normal, what is normal sleep? First of all, sleep is integral to your health, of course, because when you sleep, your nervous system gets downtime. Your brain actually is not going to sleep. Your brain, that's the time it does all the cleanup. So your fluid that's in your spine, called the cerebral spinal fluid, actually goes into the brain. And when you're sleeping, all the little spaces between the nerve cells open up. And then the fluid goes in, cleans up all the toxins, and while you sleep, the repair is going on. And when you sleep, different hormones are being introduced to your body, like melatonin at night, cortisol in the morning, growth hormone at night. So sleep is actually a really good time for repair. You need it. But we're sleep deprived as a nation. We're spending billions of dollars on sleep aids, and the prescriptions for sleeping pills just in the last 9
I'm
months
bracing myself.
and went up by 40%. Right. So everybody's
Wow.
having chronosomnia, right? It's just been like, am I going to get a vaccine? All this fear and uncertainty. So our stress causes a huge problem for our sleep. We're supposed to go to sleep 6 to 8 hours. That's good sleep. But during that sleep, how does your brain go into REM, non-REM sleep? Does it go into deep or slow wave sleep? it's almost like a washing machine, Ranveer, like
Right.
you know how your
Yeah.
clothes have to go through a washing machine cycle.
Cycles.
Your body and brain have to cycle through those various forms, and then you wake up restored. But what sleeping pills are doing, they're only targeting one area of the sleep cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your clothes come out dirty still in the morning because you feel like you slept, but it wasn't a restorative sleep.
Yeah.
So the newer drugs that I attended this seminar for doctors the other day, and it was 80 doctors from across Canada. What they're looking at is said, you know, all those sleeping pills, they have side effects. You get
Yeah.
addicted, you lose memory, etc. People have accidents the next morning because they
Yeah.
can't focus. So the newer drugs they're looking at is, well, how do we block wakefulness? And you know, again, every drug has side effects. What I profess and what I hope that I'm sure you teach as well is learning how to master your mind so that you create a mindset of sleep.
Yeah,
You
for
learn
sure.
to challenge your beliefs. A lot of people lie awake at night and say, oh, well, if I don't sleep tonight, I'm going to have a rotten day. All the sleeplessness is going to kill me. So, all these distorted cognitive beliefs that they
Yeah.
have about sleep have to be challenged, and they have to reframe and say, you know what? I'm going to manifest good sleep by making sure that I start thinking differently before I go to bed. So it's a little
Yeah.
exercise where you create a sleep mindset based
Yeah.
on trust, not fear. You clean out all the stuff that you're thinking about, declutter, and so tonight I'm going to do a body scan. So you start with scanning from your toes all the way up to your body, and then relax the muscles, contract and relax. And then you calm down the mind,
Mm-hmm.
stop, observe, detach, and affirm the soda technique and just say, okay, no thought is coming through that's going to be detrimental. I'm only going to think thoughts that serve me.
Yeah.
So once you get your mind, your body, and everything to calm down, you can induce sleep. You train your body to sleep. So those are called cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, and they're much more superior than taking medication.
For sure.
But if it's severe and somebody's not sleeping, sometimes I do have to prescribe medication.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. I this is I actually created a little sleep spray, which is like a
Oh,
vitamin-based spray you spray on your skin. I'll have to send you some. We haven't even talked
great.
about it. We have so much to always talk about,
I know, right?
but I've actually been able to get my clients wean them off sleeping pills by using the spray, and it's
Wonderful.
vitamin. It's magnesium based, and it's derm.
Magnesium is wonderful. I
Yeah,
talk about magnesium in the
yeah,
book, and
you do.
magnesium induces sleep. So that's great that you've come up with
Yeah.
that. Good for you.
Oh yeah, and it's just for me. It's just I like to try to find a solution, and people don't. You don't even need a lot of it. Once you start remembering what it feels like to sleep, you get in that behavioral pattern, and you start to go, oh, I like this. I
Yeah.
can do this. I can manage it. And so whether it's something small like that. There's also I use this mat to mattress where I do the downward dog when I'm really stressed, and I imagine that all my negative thoughts are going into the mat. And then I do up
Mhm.
dog to open my chest before I go to bed. So there's
So
all
that's perfect.
little,
Those are great techniques.
yeah,
Yeah.
so a dump and an open. So just to try to say, I don't need to take this with me to bed, but I do need to expand myself. And when I go to sleep, and then there's been times, I have teenagers. I was 16 and a half, almost 16 and a half, and a 13-year-old. And sometimes, when they first start venturing out and they come home at 11 and I go to bed at 9, and then my sleep is sort of disrupted because I'm
Yeah.
waking
Yes.
up. And so I do the same as what you suggested. I say, oh, even though I woke up, I'm going to wake up feeling refreshed. And I just tell myself that.
Good. That's the self-talk is so important, right? And what are we telling ourselves? So if we're telling ourselves, oh, sleep deprivation kills people, well,
Yes.
yeah, there's a statistic about that, but there's also a statistic that you're not going to die from, not having slept
No.
one night or, so we have to really learn to say, well, what are we telling ourselves?
Yeah.
What's that internal dialogue? And many of us get caught up in the fear and the anxiety from that fear. So you've got good techniques, and I totally support those.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's so many more in your book. And the last section, and then we're going to talk about the reframe, which is phenomenal. Um, it's this mind your immune system.
Mhm.
And I put a little post-it here just because it's so such a timely conversation about hygiene hypothesis. And right now where they're we're doing all of this cleaning and sanitizing and all of that, and I was just curious about,
Yeah,
how's that
so
going to
interesting.
impact.
So the immune system, when I was doing the research, I was just absolutely fascinated. And the fascination comes from the fact that our immune system has been evolving ever since we walked on this planet. So we've learned to accommodate bacteria and viruses. We have trillions of bacteria in our gut that outnumber the human DNA in our body. So we have more bacterial DNA than we do human DNA. So
So
that's
cool.
very fascinating. And our signature microbiome, the number of bacteria that we have is very different than yours or mine, depending on your diet, depending on your mother, depending on if you were born by C-section or vaginal delivery. So a lot of things go into building the microbiome, but the more robust your microbiome is, the better your immune system is going to be, right? Again, back to the gut.
Back to the gut.
And we talked about neurogastroenterology earlier,
Yeah.
but the new emerging data is showing psychology, neurology, and immunology, psychoneuroimmunology. They're showing that our immune system is actually an extension of our nervous system. They're calling the immune system our floating brain because these
Wow.
cells are so intelligent that they can remember things. So if you were allergic to peanuts, you'll remember it forever. Your immune
Yeah.
system is like an elephant, never forgets. And then, so we're with the coronavirus, everybody's so worried about the virus, but I kept telling all my patients, look, you have to create a robust immune system. We've been through pandemics before. We've been
Yeah.
exposed to viruses. The ones who are dying with coronavirus, there was something going on with their immune system that they could not create enough
Right.
immunity. So older people are at a disadvantage because as we get older, this big, big gland right here called the thymus gland sits on
Yes.
top of our heart. It gets smaller in
Right.
adults, but children have a big one. So children were getting less sick, but the older people over 80 were
Yeah.
dying, right?
Right.
Then we found some younger people were dying, but then they had immune problems.
Right.
So I said, look, we're waiting for the virus to come and hit us, but we have to improve the immune system. We're waiting for the vaccine, but the vaccine's only going to work if your immune system is good and you make
100%.
antibodies, right?
Yeah.
So how do we create a robust immune system that we support and promote so that we stay healthy? And so the Reframe toolkit
Yeah.
applies to the immune system. I don't know if you can
Yeah. Now I
see.
can see it. Yeah.
And I can send you the PDF of this if you want.
Sure. I'd love that. And I can
Papers.
share it.
And it just basically takes everything in the book and say, what's a short way to say, here's a toolkit. Keep my immune system healthy, then I'll keep my stress at bay. I'll stay healthy. So this applies to just basic health. So let's start with R.
Yes, please.
The R is reset your nervous system. Very first thing before anything, learn to reset your nervous system by learning the BMW meditation.
Yeah.
So that's the breathing, the mindfulness, and the word. So the breathing, inhale through your mouth, inhale through your nose, hold it for 5 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth. Make your exhale long and say a word like amen or om when you're exhaling. So that's the word.
Yeah.
And your mind, just focus it on the breath, right? Because it goes everywhere. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing, is reset your body by resetting your nervous system. E is exercise. You and I just talked, why is exercise so
Yeah.
important? You
Yeah.
got to burn off the stress. F is for food. So when you've got a calm mind, you're going to choose better food for your gut, your immune
Yes.
system. You won't pick foods that are inflammatory. And we do recommend under food some supplement, like vitamin D does improve the immune system. So I'm only going to tell you things that are studied and scientifically proven, but vitamin C, vitamin D, omega-3, and zinc are good supplements. R is rest. And when I say rest, I'm not just talking about sleep. We've already talked but rest is downtime away from your phone. Every time that phone dings,
Yeah.
it causes a rise in your heart rate and blood pressure.
Right.
So every time we're responding to something,
Yeah.
teenagers are now addicted to their phone, but their nervous system is revved up all the time.
Yeah.
So rest means unplugging from technology for a couple hours, sit in nature, and just let your nervous system get some downtime. Okay.
Perfect.
A is awareness. We spoke about
Mhm.
awareness. Once you become aware of the thoughts you think, you are learning to master your mind, right?
Yes.
Because awareness is the catalyst of change.
Yeah.
And M is for mindset. What do we want? We're all going to default to stress. If we leave ourselves to our own devices,
Yes.
we are programmed to be on alert all the time. That's how we survived as a species. But if you want to have a different default system that's sustainable, healthy, going to give you more energy, more vitality, you've got to learn the mindset of resilience. So you've got
Yes.
to learn to adapt to this new world with resilience, showing up grounded, showing
Yeah.
up in control, showing up in trust. So
Yeah.
that's the mindset. The E is to tell people, look, we're not saying don't go to your doctor. We want you to have self control, self regulation, be in charge of your own health. When it comes to your mind is something you know well. You can
Mhm.
change the way you show up. But E is for examine, go to the doctor. If your symptoms are severe, you need to get examined.
Yeah.
Maybe your anxiety is so severe, you might need medication. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You're so depressed, you might need medication.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with the intervention of medication or surgery. Sometimes we need that.
Yes.
So we have to learn to say, what can we prevent? Your
Yes.
job is to be accountable to your health and learn to prevent illness. But there's nothing wrong with going to a doctor when we need
Yeah.
intervention and then come back and prevent again.
Absolutely. And it's that whole idea of being awake and engaged for your life's experience, right? I mean,
Yeah.
all the things you talk about in your book, like every single one of them you can manage as a
It's good.
human. You
I want to make it easy that people can
Yeah,
do it.
there's nothing in here that you can't do, and that's what's incredible about it and so powerful about it, is that it reminds you of who you are. And if you think about, I use the Carl Sagan quote a lot because I have a thing called the sun visualization I do with kids, but I always say you're made of star stuff, like, and then there's that quote by it'll come to me who said it, but and she says, when I get to the end of my life, I want to know that I've lived the length of it, the width of it, as well as the length of it.
Oh, interesting.
And so Dr. Pawa's book is saying to you, go wide.
Oh, wow.
Don't try to like stay in this little tiny thing. I can't look at my stress, or I can't look at my food, or I can't. Go wide because it's yours, and take ownership of it and show up with your physician, show up with your therapist, show up with your friends as that wide version of you saying, I'm okay. This is all of who I am. And there's so much power in that. And I
That's
just,
the word you use, power. Yet reclaim your power and
yes,
stand in your power because you have that's your power. No one should take
yes.
that away from you.
Yeah. It's been such an honor to have you here today. I'm just so grateful to be able to share your work and spread your message, because what you're doing, I have no words for the gratitude, because it's so powerful, and the lives and that width that we're gonna get from people being able to just look at their lives and know that they can manage it. They're resilient.
Well, I'm going to use your analogy about width, but thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. You really did your homework because you brought up so many details, and it's great that your audience is benefiting from your curiosity. So
Thank
thank you.
you. No, thank you so much. And for anybody that's interested in learning how to connect with Dr. Pawa, for links to her book, everything is going to be below the video here on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast, the links are going to be there too. I will be sharing everything that I have about Dr. Pawa with you. So anytime she's got something new coming out, I'm going to share it with you as well. Thank you so much again for listening this far. I hope you will follow through and order the book today. Don't wait till tomorrow, just do it today, because then you won't put it off. And then start your journey to really embrace your mind-body connection and live wide. So thank you so much, Dr. Pawa, and I'll see you all
Thank
next
you.
time.
See
Thank you.
you. See you. Bye.